Hi, it's Nicole, and today I'm doing a June reading wrap-up. The first book that I finished in June was How Migration Really Works by Hein de Haas. Immigration has been one of the biggest issues that we've been dealing with recently. I mean, I would argue that not just recently, it's a huge issue for a lot of people for whatever reason. And I feel like it's also an issue that, considering how much people seem to care about it, most people don't really seem to know very much about it. And I feel like we do ourselves a disservice by just commenting on things with just vibes as our sources. And I felt it was important for me to not just be going on vibes, however well-meaning, about various topics. And I've been interested in what the situation actually is. Like, is this the issue that people think it is? And is it an issue for the reasons that people think? And so I picked up this book because it is dispelling myths on both the right and the left. And I think we tend to think of immigration myths as being like the right is the only one who has these myths that it believes about immigration, and it twists things for nefarious reasons. But I think the left also believes certain things, and I was not immune to that. There are a lot of things that I thought about immigration and kind of took for granted that turns out were not as I thought that they were. This book I thought was very good on breaking down those myths on both sides, but not sacrificing morality to do so. So it was important to me, as I'm going through this book, to have the confidence that this person is not a psychopath. That was an important piece that helped me to challenge myself on the leftist myths that I was believing, because I knew that I felt more like I could trust the author, knowing that they weren't coming at this from a place, an ethicsless, amoral place. I'm not sure how else best to explain that. Even though I listened to this on audiobook, there was a lot of information to get through, so I actually had to borrow it several times. I think the first time I actually took this out from the library was in January, and then I had to retake it out several times between then and now, just to finish it. It is very thorough, without getting to the level of being academic, and I liked that the structure of it goes through each migration myth, setting up what the myth is, and it sort of gives each one the respect of saying without saying, I see why you would think this, but this is what the research actually shows. And so, although I think it was challenging in having you break down your preconceived ideas, it wasn't insulting to anyone in why you would have previously thought a certain thing. Another book that does this very well is Ha-Joon Chang's 23 Things They Don't Tell You About Capitalism. I learned a lot through that book, and I think anyone who enjoyed that book will probably enjoy this one as well. This is one of those books that I not just highly recommend, I feel like it should be required reading, certainly for all voters, but also for all citizens. Next, I finished a book that I had on my shelves for years, and that is Petit Nicolas, which is in French. I'm pretty sure I got it last time I was in Paris, which is pre-pandemic, so a while ago now. And in February, I did actually sort of half-assedly do my French Feb challenge, where I was listening to more podcasts in French, and I picked up a book in French that I'd started reading. I'm a little ways into it, but found myself kind of stalling on that. And then there's an element of bullying, and it's very frustrating to read that kind of thing. And then it's the added element of it being in a second language, where there was like a bit of occasional barrier every time I had to look something up, and I think I just needed a lower barrier for getting back into my French, because it's been a little while now. So this was a perfect pickup. It is a book that's for kids, really. It's ages 9 and up, which that is me after all, and it was just delightful. It's just a little kid, like an elementary school kid. Really short stories, like maybe 10 pages per story, about like little adventures and things that he gets up to with his friends. There is a really fun amount of ironic humor in it the whole time that I feel like doesn't baby kids. It like lets them in on these jokes and sets up a certain thing, and then the way, like, you know that there's some sort of humorous twist coming, but that's always just delightful when it does arrive. It's not always as straightforward as you think it's going to be. In fact, I think it's often not as straightforward as you think it's going to be. So that was a really fun one and definitely got me back into the swing of French. Now I'm trying to decide what my next French pickup will be. I don't have any more kids books, so it's definitely going to be a general fiction of some sort. Maybe something a little lighter than what I had originally picked up, but I don't know, I'll see. And then the most recent book that I finished in June was Climate Change is Racist, and this was actually I don't know if I could call it a recommendation, but my brother was recommended it by someone, and even though he hasn't read it yet, he was talking to me about it, and I decided to check if my library had it. They had it on audiobook. It's only 3 hours long, and so I just picked it up and finished it. When we think of racism and we think of who would be considered racist, we're looking at an individual with intention. Things that come to mind first are not structural or institutional racism, and that is the realm that we are looking at here. So all of his arguments are very sound, and I think it is a real skill how he's able to very concisely pack a lot of nuance into such a small package. Despite being a white Brit, he grew up in Kenya and Madagascar, so his perspective is unique compared to what most people's perspectives are. And he is very measured and balanced, and as well as all of the research that he was bringing to this, the writing of the book felt very accessible and inviting, where I think the title maybe can come across a little bit obnoxious. It is one that I would recommend to a lot of people. It was interesting how he'd kind of said at one point that he wasn't sure if this was the book that he should be writing because he's white, but I feel like it is important for someone like him to write this book, and I think he did a fantastic job with that. One thing I would say though is that there are a lot of times where I think there is a temptation to say, oh, well, that's not racism, that's more like classism, that's more like anti-poor attitudes globally that are leading to that. It's not specifically racism, but I think he also does a good job of addressing where there is definitely an element of intersectionality that needs to be acknowledged, and he mentions that, but I think as a reader you need to also accept that yes, there is also intersectionality going on, and he's not, I mean, I think he does a good job of explaining what he is and isn't saying, but you know, just I think readers should go in being open to what's being said and being reasonable and fair, but I suspect there are some readers that will go in wanting to pick a fight with the facts, and that would be unfortunate for all of us. But those are the books that I read in June, and I thought that they were all fantastic, and I would recommend all of them actually. So that was a great June for me, and Le Petit Nicolas was obviously a book that I already owned, so that is one more book ticked off of my physical TBR, which I'm actually feeling kind of excited about tackling at the moment, and I'm gonna talk about that a little bit more in another video. So that's all for now, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!